So are we good, Amy? We are good. Okay, so let's go ahead and call the City of Auburn.
Recording in progress.
Now, let's go ahead and call the City of Auburn Historic Design Review Commission meeting to order. Tia, would you like to do a roll call, please?
Chair Hyatt,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kramer,
Here.
Commissioner Galliard,
Here.
Commissioner Hobbs,
Here.
Commissioner Kozinski,
Here.
Commissioner Costa, Commissioner Friesen,
Here.
and Commissioner Lindberg and Housewell are absent.
Okay, thank you. Shall we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic and one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First, happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody. I think Cinco de Mayo is observed more in the United States than it is to our south neighbor, but that's interesting. Anyway, we start out with our first item tonight, which is public comment, and so this is an opportunity for anyone that would like to speak on any items other than what is on the agenda for this evening. And the agenda for this evening, if you don't know, we only have one item. It's a public hearing. It's an ordinance amending the Historic Design Review Permit of Chapter 159 of the Auburn Municipal Code to establish exemptions for certain exterior painting and minor maintenance activities. So, under this public comment item, if there is anyone that would like to speak on something other than that, now would be the time to do so. Hearing none, we shall move on. Hearing none, we shall move on. And so that closes the public comment period. So that brings us to the main agenda item for this evening, which is the public hearing. And as I just mentioned, it's an ordinance amending section 159.497, the Historic Design Review Permit of Chapter 157 zoning of the Auburn Municipal Code to establish exemptions for certain exterior painting and minor maintenance activities from the Historic Design Review, and consideration of a resolution authorizing the use of pre-approved historic paint color collections within the Historic Design Review District. And so with that, Tia, did you need to do anything to open this item? So nice to see you, Jonathan.
So nice to see you. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, HDRC members. Jonathan Wright, Economic Development Director. Thank you all for taking the time to come out today. I know, one item things are not always that exciting. It doesn't draw large crowds, but it's something that we've been trying to move along, so I really appreciate you guys being here for it. I would like to note on a side tangent here that this year the entertainment zone does not allow drinking for Cinco de Mayo, but as of our first hearing will be May 11th. Then shortly thereafter, next year, you'll be able to walk around with an adult beverage in the streets of Auburn during Cinco, as well as St. Patrick's Day and a few others we missed along the way.
But we could have done that if Cinco de Mayo ended up being a
Correct.
Saturday.
Right. Or, yeah, correct. All right. Get this thing down. Good. All right, we're on a little bit of a delay, so. All right, so why are we here? One of the main things that came to light when I first started working here was a lot of criticism about the HDRC regulations relating to the paint and basic repairs and upkeep on buildings. Some of it's just misunderstanding. People just don't understand what the process is. They're told by their neighbor that they have to go through a public hearing, and it's long and it's expensive, and all those things. One of the things that we have learned along the way is, paint is a fairly minor thing. It's a temporary condition. It doesn't necessarily change the structure. It just changes, the longevity of the exterior of the structure, and that roofs, such as, awning roofs and so forth, they wear out. and those things have to be replaced and are considered to be fairly minor in nature. You know, we have an infiltration in a lot of places of very cost-effective and affordable 3-tab shingles, which, you know, is great weatherproofing for awnings, but it just doesn't look historic. They are not historic shingles. They don't meet any historic value for the district. And so one of the things we're trying to do is looking at a way we can incentivize getting better quality roofing. So if somebody did want to do something other than what they have, which if they have three tab, you know, comp shingles, then, you know, what are they going to do? Well, they come in here and talk to us. They go, well, I want to put metal on there. We go, well, you got to go to a public hearing. You got to go through all these steps and processes. So looking at exemptions there too. Also, you know, one of the things, we are a small operation. So the more we put regulations on folks, especially when, you know, Tia's got somebody like me that's out there banging the drum and trying to get people to come in and do things, then that puts them in her pipeline, and that takes a lot of resources, staff resources, time at the front counter, explaining the regulations to people, getting them in the process, doing the agendas, doing all the things that we're doing tonight. So we hope to remedy some of that going forward. And we are still here, so there we go. So if you recall, it was about 2 years ago, we had a lady called Michelle Reeves. She got hired by the city of Auburn to basically walk around town and work with our brick and mortar retailers. And one of the first things that she was looking at was paint. Then she was looking at awnings. Then she looked at lighting and how that would interact with the building's front. Anything to try to incentivize people to get through the front door. And one of the things she said was, let them paint. There's no harm in it. This is actually one of her slides. She referred to Auburn as tan land. Very bland, very basic. Not a lot of color out there. And, you know, the only things that separate, especially in the downtown square, one business from another in a lot of cases is just the color of the umbrellas. It's not the actual buildings themselves. They're just big, long buildings that are tan or beige colored and not a lot of character to them. I will note that that's the Hink block on the left-hand side there, which is going to look a lot better here very soon after you getting your approval. One of the things this is actually one of her slides, she said, don't be scared of color. Towns can be colorful. And you know, the interesting thing is I was thinking about this as I was driving down to Sacramento today, and I happened to go down by 50, went past Folsom, and I'm looking over at Folsom and I see a big blue building. And then I see an orange building. This is right downtown. I'm realizing these folks have already done this. They're already working on things with color. I did a quick Google search of California towns with color and character, and I got this one on the coast, and now I can't remember what it was, but it kept popping up because it was one of those ones that they had allowed people just to have some artistic creativity with the colors, knowing that, you know, they could be changed at any point, and that they're just temporary improvements that will wear out over time and have to be addressed. The next one's just another historic. You know, everybody knows the Painted Ladies. So just looking at that and thinking about our town and how, and those are pastels, not anything we're looking at tonight, but just looking at how the differentiation and paint makes a big difference just on that block, which otherwise if they're all white or they're all tan, nobody would ever pay attention to them and they wouldn't be as famous as they are. So next, if you recall, we did the form-based code. We went through a number of actual public hearings to get to a certain point with that, and then we were kind of put on hold because of the environmental process. Well, one of the things that we've already kind of gone through was the fact that we had looked at this provision. We had looked at putting something into an ordinance that would allow for people to paint their buildings so long as they were painted with a certain color palette. So if you recall, during that one, it was the Sherwin-Williams, which was our standard color palette. That one consisted of 65 colors, which actually isn't a lot of colors to choose from when you're looking at, you know, so many buildings in a historic district. And I know I passed these out last time, but I'll. So since then, I started looking at what other businesses we have in town that sell paint. You know, we have a Sherwin-Williams. Basically, you know, paint colors can be made by any manufacturer. It's just, you know, having the different types of colors. But then I look at, okay, well, who else does, if you were as a patron walking into a business, what do other people stock? Warehouse Paints and Ace Hardware both do Benjamin Moore. So now we also have another local retailer that does both those types of paints and colors. So we're also supporting our local businesses. I did look at RADA. They do not have anything that I could take away from them, even though that we do have a RADA here now over by Mr. Pickles in the Staples Shopping Center. So today, the ordinance going forward would be the one with the Sherwin-Williams historic color palette, just as we did with the form-based code, which has the 65 colors, but also having the Benjamin Moore, which luckily has a lot more options, 190. Oh. We're also brags that the Secretary of the Interior, they work with them on the actual colors so that they are consistent with historic structures and so forth. Oh, look at more tan. This was not actually to call out these two buildings as being just the same color. But if you look at the two awnings, you have the basic 3-tab comp awnings up on Upper Lincoln, and then just right down the street, you have the metal standing seam, which is a much nicer looking roof. But if somebody was to come in today and say, I would like to, let's just say hypothetically Ninja Sushi, would like to do metal standing seam, we have to go back through that whole process. That means T has to get involved, get samples, do all the things, do staff reports, take in applications, do notices, do all those things just to get a better looking, better quality roof, which, I mean, that looks outstanding on that building. I know that's a decorative awning. This one's more actually an actual awning, but I'm just looking at it from the perspective of the actual roofing material itself. Sorry, I put boring. Anybody who can see this that owns that building or likes that building, I'm sorry. Again, Tanland just keeps coming. At least they have multiple colors on this one. But again, we have 3-tab, very common. It's a very cost-effective way to do roofing. And if you came in today and went, well, you know, I'm looking at my roofing options, we would go, well, you can replace what you got. Or you can go through a public hearing process. You have to give us all this information. When the ultimate goal, especially like in Old Town, is to get like the corrugated. It seems like everybody's got the corrugated roof, but this has got a corrugated awning, which would be much more fitting to the historic district there, and a far better fit than just having this 3-tab awning. And again, you know, roofs and awnings wear out, so all these things are temporary. Granted, a standing seam roof will last a lot longer than the paint job, but still, these are all interchangeable things that ultimately are working to protect the structure itself, that at any point could be, you know, changed in the future. So again, we have comp, and then we have a metal standing seam awning there. So just again for reference, looking at the different types and what we've allowed, and the infiltration of how many different ones actually have the comp shingles. And I didn't take pictures of everything because then we'd really be bored. But so tonight, what we're asking the Historic Design Review Commission to do is to recommend approval of an ordinance that would allow for the use of the pre-designated colors. It also allows for the addition of the awning materials, the roofing materials, so long as they are metal or masonry. So they have to be of some type of, you know, quality in order to put on. This does not negate from the actual historic design guidelines, so they still have to follow those. It just makes the steps in the process are a lot faster because it just deals with staff working on those things with them so that they can move forward with them. And then ultimately passing the resolution that would then allow us to use these 2 color palettes as the approved colors going forward. The city attorney even made me do a range, so they can't change the colors in the future. We actually have to stick to those, and if they do another color palette, we'd have to come back with a new resolution if we want to adopt that or stick with the old one going forward. The other thing I want to note is there's a provision in this ordinance that we're proposing that says that you can't just paint unpainted things. So that's really
And
important.
just paint what?
You can't just paint unpainted things. So this is strictly for repainting. If somebody's going to paint their brick building, they have to go through a process. This is simply to apply paint over paint. But, you know, masonry, any exposed brick, any of those things, if anybody tried to do something like that, would have to go through this body. So this concludes staff's report, and we're hoping for a recommendation. And questions, if anybody has questions.
We have questions
I know we've been through
from
this a little bit.
commissioners of Jonathan. Yeah, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. Did staff look at an abbreviated process like a design review step that doesn't require a public hearing? That would improve the speed slightly, but also reduce the cost, I think.
There's actually two different processes here. One, the roofing materials is actually an administrative process. It's part of the designation of the authority underneath the Public Works Director. The painting itself is an exemption. So they just have to, they would come in to identify the types of paint colors, or one of the things I'm planning on doing shortly thereafter, this is actually putting together a flyer so we can get people interested in starting to do paint work out there.
So when you say they have to come in and identify paint colors, does that mean it still needs staff approval?
Technically, it's an exemption. It wouldn't. They were required to use what they have, I mean, with what's authorized.
So it does need staff's approval.
We would hope they'd come in and ask questions, but technically, it's under the exemption category.
Say that again, you would hope that they don't ask questions?
We would hope that they would come in and ask questions, yes.
Well, I guess my question is, can they just pick one of these paints and paint without notifying staff at all? Or do they have to come in and get staff's approval?
It's under the exemption category in the code, so it would be exempt from having to come in. Right.
Understood, okay.
Right. We do have an enforcement mechanism because obviously they have to use the appropriate paint colors, and if somebody came in, you know, with something that wasn't approved, then we could do an enforcement
Okay, so,
action on that,
so for paint, they do not need any approval whatsoever.
technically.
And for
They just have the
awnings-
guidelines they have to follow per the
but-
exemption.
But for awnings, they do still
Correct.
need staff's approval.
Correct.
Do other commissioners have questions?
My question didn't get answered, actually. Did staff look at a design review
Yeah.
process that was more of an administrative?
So that's what we have right now, is the administrative process, but it's only for like. So it either, if you're coming in to do the same re-roof and you have to bring in, this is what I have right now, this is what I'm going to, and it's similar like for like, then you can do it at staff level. So what we're saying is going from a 3-tab to a metal roofing of just what we did at the Hink Block building. Right now, that process, because it's a change of materials, we have to bring it. And so now this would allow for someone to say, hey, I have 3-tab, but I'm going to metal, and that falls within the ordinance allowance.
And we looked at several different options, and
But for paint, did you look at an administrative process
We
that
did.
didn't require coming to us?
we discussed a lot of different options and
And
decided.
why was that not pursued?
Well, we're leaning towards what the original Michelle Reeves guidance was and just letting them go do paint. And so looking at that, but saying, okay, go paint, however, you know, here's the paint colors that you're allowed to use.
Well, yes, it does answer the question. Thank you.
Otherwise, if we were going to do an administrative process, we'd have to set up that process, assign a fee to it, do a lot of different things, including having some type of administrative application that would be suited for them filling out and going through that process. The goal of this is to have people invest in their buildings and try to streamline it, make it as easy as possible. That was staff's goal.
I will
Well-
say, very few people just paint without
Right.
coming to the counter because they understand that they're in the historic district. So whenever we have somebody that, they come to the counter and say, hey, I'm thinking about painting, can I do this color? So I think although we're having it in the ordinance, we're still going to have to provide that educational component, you know, letting people know, we have these swatches, we have the Kelly Moore, or the Sherwin-Williams, and we have the Benjamin Moore, and we have to say, these are the colors you can choose from. And I will say, we had to go through that with the Hink Block building, because initially, when the applicant brought in suggested colors, it was like, nope, these aren't in the color palette, let's go through it, find something that is similar. So it was more of a educational process to go back and pick that proper color.
Well, it's one thing to be on the paint palette. It's one thing to use, it's another to use a combination of colors in a way that is compatible. So I guess that my reluctance here is to have a process where somebody can just go paint.
Meaning they're coming in and they're saying, I want these 3 colors, but they're off the historic palette and they're doing a combination of different.
No, they just go ahead and paint.
But
And-
but like Jonathan's saying is in our ordinance, we have specific, these are the color palettes that you can use. So then what, it would be code enforcement based, code
code enforcement
compliance
for
if they
that.
painted the wrong color.
I
They
think what
didn't
you're
paint
saying,
something.
I think what he's saying though is that they pick non-compatible colors out of the fan deck
Right.
and you end up with something that's not as savory. But these are commercial buildings, and a lot of times people do pick things that are non-compatible to try to stand out. And that's one of the goals, is actually to have these districts and have these buildings stand out a little more.
Other commissioners with questions?
I'm sort of a Captain Obvious here. I'm thinking, okay, so we reduce the amount of labor and time spent at the city, but now we're going to increase it by driving around, making sure that when buildings are painted, that they're doing it within those right color palettes, within the approved colors.
It's probably going to be more or less complaint driven. That'll be something that, I mean, if somebody goes off the rails, we now have a mechanism to go back and go, wait, I'm not saying that everybody's going to do the right thing, as you guys are pointing out, but not doing the right thing may not be a horrible thing. And if people are not complaining and code enforcement's not aware of it, those things may just continue. I can think of a couple of buildings in town that have been painted without even going through this process. Nobody said anything, and I think they look great. So that's just, out there. The other thing is that Old Town and Downtown are actually working on a grant program. This is tailored into, which I should have probably mentioned to begin with. They've already designated $10,000 to actually buy paint for the buildings to start to paint. So we're going to funnel them into this process where they're going to know what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, and get them some money so that they can actually start improving things within the district. Now, that won't last, over the years. But again, that's also trying to ingrain it in the folks that are out there, that we do have certain parameters, but we are relaxing so that people can get out there and maintain their structures without too much extra work.
Sorry, I have a comment. What about some sort of a document that if someone wants to paint their building, this
Absolutely.
document has options?
Right. And it'll also be on our website too.
Yeah, so, if they want to do, say, a color country redwood, and then woodland blue, and then Stratton blue, and you're like, those 3 don't go together. That's not one of the options. So then you don't get someone who has a building that doesn't look, like they know what they're doing with paint colors. But that's just a suggestion. Maybe too many choices is not a good choice.
Interesting.
I'd like to expand a little bit on Commissioner Kramer's comment about looking into an administrative process. I understand that if you have an administrative process and staff has to approve it, that it might take a little longer, it might cost a little more, but how much longer and how much more? If it's a relatively easy process, where somebody comes in and says, hey, we would like to do historic orange with historic blue awnings. I can't imagine that would take too long for staff to look at that and say, that's not a good combination. Maybe you ought to consider a different combination.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that the expense for the applicant to do that wouldn't be that expensive either. I personally have no problem at all with this being out of the privy of the HDRC and letting staff handle it as per this ordinance, the way the ordinance is drafted. But it seems like somebody ought to be able to say these color combinations are or are not acceptable.
I think we get into the issue, and we did have this with legal, about subjective versus objective.
Exactly.
I'm not an expert on paint colors, so if somebody comes to me, my eye may say, no, I don't like that, but it actually is complementary based on the complementary color wheel and so forth. So I think when Jonathan and I did, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we were having these conversations back and forth with legal, is we have to be very careful on what is considered subjective and objective. And we are not, and paint is just one of those things that can be considered that. We're having these same issues on design standards for housing, and anything like that, is the state regulations that are being handed down right now is very much scrutinizing subjective versus objective. And it's not just in this realm. We're just starting to experience in a lot of other things.
Right. So if we were to go with an administrative process, we probably wouldn't have the authority to say if they're using the designated colors that they can't use those colors. And again, that was Michelle's whole argument, was it's temporary. Let them paint, you know? And I should have brought them up. There's some pretty wild things that, you know, the old building looked horrid and the new building looks, you know, bright and lively, so.
Other
What
questions?
about, in the Secretary of the Interior standards, there are buildings, I'm not saying we have them, I'm just saying hypothetically, there are buildings that the color palette is historic in and itself. You've given them carte blanche to go in and paint, regardless if the color palette was a character-defining feature. I'm a little concerned about, I'm not sure we have any of those here, but like, if you were to paint the Painted Ladies,
Right,
that would be,
Right.
they wouldn't just be able to pick from the color palette.
right,
That is something, that is a character-defining feature of those buildings.
right. But the general repainting in the Department of Interior Standards says that you're supposed to use appropriate colors for the period, which is why we're trying to
Right,
bring
and we're
these
trying to
forward.
find a balance,
Right.
right? You're trying to drive, and I understand the dilemma. You're trying to drive in economic development, but we're mandated to make sure that we protect the character of this town.
Right.
And so that idea of subjective, objective is very hard in this realm.
It's very
I
hard in our
definitely
lives.
Yeah, I have the same concerns, but I see both sides of that. I'm not sure there's a clear answer.
Does anyone know if the entire city was painted beige in the 1800s?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably wrong, I mean, that'd be it.
There was probably some color, a little bit
Yeah,
more than
definitely.
what we've got here currently. So I look at this as an opportunity for us to add some community character to historic buildings. And, you know, maybe do something a little bit, it's outside the norm of what's been going on, but as was pointed out with that assessment of our districts, we're tan land. And it does make sense to allow a little bit of leeway for folks to bring some color into this community and bring a little bit of character in here.
And all of her references were far brighter and livelier than what's on those fan decks.
Let me ask a hypothetical question. So, if we approve this, and it means anybody in the historic district, so long as they choose from the historic palette, can go ahead and paint the building any color, and I don't think we would have a problem if they painted the whole thing one color, but if they paint something, a part of it, you know, like historic orange and another part historic blue right next to each other, and at a month or so later, people from the city or the public are kind of using the subjective opinion and saying, that doesn't look so good. Would the city have any recourse?
So first off, there isn't any bright oranges or bright colors in those fan decks. That's the whole point. They're all very neutral. They kind of, a lot of them, because they are neutral colors, align with one another fairly well. So you wouldn't have necessarily a bright orange that would be right next to a bright blue. There are some shades of blue there, but they're pretty muted. Staff, working with new businesses would definitely try to coach them on, what looking at the harmony of the district there. But ultimately, I mean, it's up to the business to, unless they're doing like a mural or something like that, which would require a different process. I mean, changing one color to another or trying to match colors side by side, I get the fear. But I think we're making fear where there might not be an issue. You're looking at worst case scenario possibilities, and then at that point, we'd work with the business owner to try to figure out why they chose to do this.
So I'll take that answer as a no, there is no recourse.
Not under that scenario.
Okay.
But I do think you, Jonathan has a point. You do really have to look at these colors. You'd be hard pressed to find something that clashes.
Okay.
They're designed to kind of go together. And, you know, some of them aren't ideal against one another, but
Yeah.
they're all pretty neutral.
Yeah, I see. I'm not that much of a color guy, to be honest.
But yeah, the safety greens and the Caltrans oranges, they're not in that.
Yeah. Any other commissioners with questions or comments?
I still come back to if there was something that was a character defining feature as a color, is there anything in the ordinance for something like that?
Not in the ordinance, but it's still in our historic design guidelines, which we have, which is,
But they would be allowed to paint it. And then what would be the recourse if it was a character defining feature? Again, I don't think we have anything like that. I'm just trying to, The
When
same
you
would
say
go for-
character defining, maybe more of a public nuisance? Somebody
No,
would
so
complain and
in-
say,
in Secretary of the Interior standards, when you're looking at a historic building, certain features are given more importance. So
Right.
color of the painted ladies would be a character defining feature.
yeah, I'm trying to think.
Something that it goes to the heart of what makes that building historic
Right.
and why it's important.
The two hook and ladder companies being
Yep.
red is a
yeah,
character defining.
absolutely. But those are
So if somebody were to go
landmarks.
paint that blue,
Correct, but
they would be complying with the ordinance and we would have,
Luckily, those are city buildings, and
Right.
we'd still have to say over that.
yeah.
But
But the same could be said for like some of the materials on the administrative for metal versus that. I think we're just focusing on paint right now.
Right.
But that was something I was curious about. I mean, I know we had this when we did the ink block building.
Yep.
Right? I mean, wildland fire, wooey stuff kind of overrides a bunch of stuff. So
Yeah, the wood
standing metal
shake, you
seam-
couldn't replace it like for
Right.
like anyway.
You can't
so
do it.
The standing seam makes sense.
But again, coming back to if it's a character defining feature, if we just say you can replace it with this, what if that material is not compatible with what it was? I don't know. That's the thing I'm most concerned about is complying with and maintaining those historic characters.
Right.
If it's significant,
Right.
not just because I like it or because but because it's significant to its history.
Which I think it goes back to the design guidelines that are actually, you know, in our historic documents here that require things to be of like. And of course, we have the Department of the Interior, which talks about like for like and trying to replace things with things that are of period or bring them back to the way they were.
Okay. So again, that goes back to recourse, right? You go back to code enforcement.
Right. But a lot of these buildings with the 3-tab and all that, these are not, they're maybe historic, of historic age, but they're not technically historic buildings of any sort.
Any other questions or comments for Jonathan? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I have to open it up to the public to see if anyone from the public would like to make a comment. Go to the podium and we will start the timer. I'm kidding.
Hello, my name is Dallas Drake. I'm a resident in town and also a building owner. I also happen to be the president of the DBA, and I want to address the paint colors for this meeting. See if I can read my thing. Well, you know, the phone's fun. So I'm gonna start with, appreciate the time, everybody. Thank you so much. I know you're all busy, and this is an exhilarating topic. So the DBA did put together a grant. We allocated money to help people paint. Obviously, I think we'd all agree that fresh paint's better than old paint, and we have a lot of old paint. So with that, our kind of push was a little bit different. Along with my personal push and a couple other building owners, it's a split take. So obviously I own a building and we have other building owners that own buildings and want to improve, and there's a restriction with them. They feel that their limited due to process, and also why would they waste their time to do the same thing we already have? It just costs money for no reason. That being said, most of the commercial buildings, we kind of feel they're not actually truly historic in our downtown, not the old town, but in downtown where I'm speaking of. They're not really that historic. There's a lot of 60s buildings. The ones that are historic, by the way, have paint colors that are far outside of the color palette that you guys see usually anyways. And besides the brick buildings, we appreciate the brick buildings, unpainted surfaces, but the other ones, those storefronts are really simple. They're commercial facades, really basic. They were built in a cheap way. They have minimal details architecturally, and where contrast and modern colors would actually help emphasize the building features that exist rather than kind of hide them as we've currently done. Another thing is we think the downtown should feel active, inviting, and evolving, not faded, over restricted. Fresh paint with creative storefront helps identify those businesses. Like when you walk down, we have those large flats of buildings. Does anybody know how many businesses are in that long stretch of building you guys just approved a review for an awning? Does anyone have an idea?
A lot.
Is it a lot?
Just-
I'm asking if there's a number. Does anyone have a
I was
number?
gonna say
5?
8,
8?
something like that. Yes.
Man, didn't we just design some stuff to make it look better? As a resident coming in or a person coming in, you have no clue. That could be one giant building you don't want to go into. If you don't like the first building, the first business, there's nothing that says that's a different business the entire way down. I've given up on that whole thing as a person driving through. I saw 3 businesses. I saw that one with the big black awning. I saw this one with the green awning, and I saw that one. I don't need anything from those 3 stores. Thanks, I'm out of here. There's like 12 or something in that one stretch. And you would never know. But if we allowed vibrant paint, we could paint each storefront with a segregation. It could segregate the spaces, help draws that block, makes that block not only look longer, it would look identified, vibrant, different. And now you know when you went on that street, you say, wow, there's 12 different things looking at the street on this side, and there's maybe 15. There's a tree in the way. We'll cut that one down later. You have an identity. Your downtown now has an identity. The problem we have, and I have with this paint palette, is it also doesn't really inspire inspiration. It doesn't, like there's people that come to town, they want to invest. They want to spend money. They want to make their business their own. They want to show you that they're so proud of what they're offering that they're willing to put some color behind it. And we've kind of done a good job of like killing that vibe. We've reduced that enthusiasm by saying the first thing you want to do to express yourself is a ton of paperwork, all because of paint. So I hope somebody's like, we were trying to go through, I don't know, is there anything else? The investment, energy money. Oh, the other thing was downtown. It's a center of commerce. We don't think we should change neighborhoods. I think neighborhoods historically, we have some really nice housing in that area. I think are a little more limiting, but those flat commercial storefronts, it's all about commerce. Like we're trying to drive excitement, revenue, inspirational spaces, and we want spaces different than your own. And, lighting and color plays a big game in that. And when you go, we want to be different than your house. And I understand your house might not be hot pink, and that's fine. But I don't think it's that weird to have a jewelry store that's hot pink. Because I know if I was a resident coming out of town and said, that place is hot pink, I'm going to go to that one. And that's the jewelry store I'm going to go to. And it seems scary. I get it sounds ridiculous, but even the code enforcement, if enough people complain about it, if it's a bad idea, enough people complain, then it didn't go back to the public. It'd be a public nuisance at that point. That's a way you could correct a paint color that was really horrible. But I don't know. I think the restrictions on colors, even that, there's nothing that says that this is a town I want to spend money in that book. And if I rolled into a town that had buildings painted like that, I'm not looking for an antique shop. So I don't think we should make all of our businesses antique shops by default. So I was looking for a little bit more vibrancy in our color choices, and I kind of went with Michelle. I met her, and we had a great conversation, and I don't know, man. I don't think it hurts you if the paint's blue or green or red. And I also think that once someone else does it, it makes a really great facade or a storefront. I think it does nothing but forces their neighbor to contribute and be as well. Because I know if I was in a flat storefront and someone just painted the 4 stalls next to me some crazy colors and they had a ton of traffic, I'm going to be the next one in line to do something unique. So that's about it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for sharing your opinions. Any discussion amongst commissioners? Are we ready?
I have a question
Yes.
of staff. Sorry, no, of staff. What's the process? So, I mean, everybody talks about it, that it's onerous, and maybe because it's part of my day job, I don't find that, I don't find it daunting. So what is the process if somebody wants to come in and do a project, right? Everyone, Dallas, you've talked about how it's pain and it's a lot of paperwork. So it's an application, what is the process to you?
Samples, color boards, all the things you have to gather together, visualizations, renderings.
Like,
No, what if it were for administrative, right? So what, one idea was, okay, so maybe if you want the rubber stamp, you do the color palette, but if you want to do something fun and exciting, can you do an administrative approval? Right, to give people more options versus trying to limit them just to the color palette.
They could do something exciting. They don't have to use those. Obviously, you know, then they'd have to go through the historic design review process, and then that would be up to you guys to decide, not us. You're not on the record. You need to be at a microphone if you're going to talk.
No, Tia can answer it.
Yeah, Dallas is very familiar with the process that going through, but even from a administrative level, to take something in for an application and then pay the $265 fee for the administrative permit, I have to take it in, pull the colors, look at the existing. It probably, between my workload as I have right now, it's probably a couple weeks. It's not something I can just do at the counter. Usually that's, taken in. I will say that when I have had people come in before, and if I can look at it real quick and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, it's like for like, okay, good, I can do that at the counter. But if it's something different and I have to go through that, I will tell you most of the time they turn around and say, never mind. I do get that a lot because it's like, I have to take it in. I have to review it and then make that determination. If it's, again, subjective, if it's not like for like, then I have to make that determination of deferring it to historic design review.
And is that different than what other cities and municipalities do?
I've not worked in a municipality that has the administrative process that you have to do. Usually, it's very similar to what Jonathan is proposing in other districts. You have a color palette, this is what you use, it's built into the ordinance.
Any other comments, questions?
Can we have a color palette that is strictly for downtown and then a different one for Old Town?
Good.
Because I do agree with what you said about the buildings. They're different. And I like bright buildings.
Well, again, this is a test. You know, we're rolling this thing out. We can change, it's an ordinance. We can change the ordinance. We can bring things back. We can change the color palettes. This is our first run at it. You guys have the discretion to tell us what colors we can use under this new regulation, which means that in the future, if you wanted to get a little more vibrant and you wanted to change things up for different districts, you have the authority to do that by resolution.
I keep thinking of something you said a little bit ago, Jonathan. It's just paint. And I agree. It's
That was
just paint.
Michelle's thing. It's just paint. Let them paint. It's just paint. It's temporary. It's 10 years, if that.
Commissioner Kramer?
So I'm fine with a color palette that we have, and if they have something more creative or outside the palette, they have to go through the design review process. And the reason is that I don't want somebody to say, who approved that? That looks terrible. And it doesn't enhance, it brings down the area. And so I think there should be more eyes in reviewing it than just the owner. So that's where I'm kind of coming from.
When you say that, you're referring to something outside of the color palette?
Yeah, the historic
Yes.
palette.
Other comments? Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion then. And I'm going to make a motion recommending approval of this ordinance to the city council amending section 159.497, Historic Design Review Permit of Chapter 159 zoning of the Auburn Municipal Code, and pass a resolution pre-approving the historic paint color collections for use in the Historic Design Review District.
I will second that.
And obviously, if someone wants to do something outside of that, we have an existing process of which to do that. So with a motion and a second, should we do a roll call?
Yes, Chair Hyatt,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kramer,
Aye.
Commissioner Galliard,
Yes.
Commissioner Hobbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Kozinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Costa,
Yes.
Commissioner Friesen.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes.
Unanimous approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan and Tia, for your patience on hearing through the discussion. I think that was a very good discussion that we had.
We do not have a city council meeting the second part of this month, so this will be going to the city council on June 8th. Oh, it's right, we moved that one too. No, but then I can't do it, I can't do an introduction of an ordinance on a special meeting, so it's not gonna be till the
The end of June.
end of June.
Okay.
While you're up there, do you want to do your economic development updates? If you have any,
Oh,
since we're
boy.
doing staff follow-up?
They've heard so much.
I
from
know.
me.
If
I
you
was
had,
gonna say, we just met, was it 2 weeks ago?
we did.
We just
So-
met 2 weeks ago. If you feel like there isn't anything urgent,
Nothing urgent, other than I would like to give Tia credit. She finally got the Powers Mansion through, so they have their renovation permit done. That thing is all set to go forward now. So I think it's 17 beds, 17 keys, and a full kitchen, restaurant. So now we're ready. Powers Mansion, which is up, yeah,
yeah.
the pink building, which is supposed to be white.
So
Yep.
it would be opening approximately when?
We have, now that's the next thing. We
They
got them
have their
this far.
tenant improvement permit to
We-
do the interior.
Gotcha.
We got them this far, so that's a good step, because now there's nothing holding them back from actually moving forward. So now it's on me to just keep the pressure on.
Excellent.
And the Hink Block building has already set up scaffolding to start the painting. So thank you very much. Yep, they're doing sections at a time, weather dependent, but should take them like a full 5 days, and then they'll do the roof. Yeah, that's. I'm hoping. Absolutely. And so for city council meetings, we have the next Monday, 5/11. That's a big one. Should be a very long meeting in case you all want to join. Initial budget presentation will be submitted that one. And then the following council meeting will be June 1st, which we're hoping that all commissioners can be there. We've actually invited other commissioners, Chamber of Commerce, I think Amy had said as well. This will be to do an accommodation for Commissioner Galliard to send him on his way. So if anyone would like to attend that one on June 1st, it will be to honor Mr. Galliard. And then our next Planning Commission meeting, we are tentatively set up for June 16th. That's where we'll do the initial first call, the mobile food vending ordinance. Okay. And then I did send out vacation calendars. I think everybody has, for the most part, replied on that one. I think Commissioner Kozinski, you remember seeing that email? Okay. No worries. I'll circle back. Just looking at how everyone's calendar looks over the June, July, August 18th, and September 15th calendars, just so that we can keep on track. I'm trying to have a meeting every month because we do have things coming down the pipeline that need to go to council, like we just did the ATP, and now we're going to be doing, eventually the general plan update, start working on those items, just so you can see how the process is going into the fall to get them to council. So we do like everybody's input. So we'll continue to have these joint meetings, even though maybe HDRC may not be motioning voting on them, but just so that you guys are aware of things that are happening citywide. Did you have a question?
So no meeting on the 19th?
No meeting, thank you very much. No meeting on the 19th.
So our next meeting Planning Commission or HDRC is not till June,
June 16th,
right?
correct. But we're hoping we'll see each other on June 1st at council.
Okay.
I can't make it.
No June 1st? And no June 16th for you either, okay. Okay, that's a big deal.
That's fun.
And then July would be the 21st,
July 21st,
and August.
18th,
Perfect.
and September
Thanks.
15th. And we should have a new planning commissioner, I believe, in, I don't know if we'll have for the June 16th, but for sure July. We should have someone appointed. We will have June 16th? Okay,
Excellent. Glad to hear
Perfect.
it. So when will we learn who this individual is? Okay. This Thursday, 2 days.
for the May 11th appointing?
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
You
Anything
left your
else?
seat warm, Steve.
Anything else? Okay, let's, a motion, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Meeting adjourned.